Guru Brahma Guru Vishnu Guru Devo Maheshwara Guru Sakshat Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Ajnana Timirandhasya Jnananjana Chalagaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Tumeva Mada Cha Pita Tvameva Tumeva Bandhuscha Sakha Tvameva Tumeva Vidya Dravinam Tumeva Sarvam Amriteshwari Ma Tumeva Sarvam Amriteshwari Ma Tumeva Sarvam Amriteshwari Ma. Om Amriteshwari Namah. Let's begin with the short meditation. Kindly sit straight and make sure your vertebral column, your spinal column is erect. Slowly close your eyes. Try to focus your awareness on your breathing. Breathing normally, watching each and every inhalation and exhalation. As you witness your inhalations and exhalations, feel the relaxation that happens spontaneously as a result of this. And now we'll chant Om 3 times. And as we chant Om, imagine the sound of Om to arise from your navel area. And visualize the sound traveling upwards along your spine. Now kindly take a deep breath. Feel the silence. The relaxed mind. The purity after chanting Om. Once again, turn your attention inwards to your breathing process. Now as you breathe in, chant the mantra, the syllable Ma, along with your in-breath. And when you exhale, chant Om. So Ma, when you breathe in, and hold your breath just for a few seconds. Don't hold it too long. And then breathe out, chanting Om. So continue like this for some time. Ma. Om. Slowly and slowly the reverberations of Ma and Om becomes more and more subtle. You just feel the vibrations of Ma and Om. Ma is a representation of divine love and Om of divine light. Now feel your heart being filled with that light and love. And feel the expansion of the heart. Now feel the love for all of creation. And imagine a ray of light going out from your heart, filled with the qualities of love, of peace, of bliss, and of contentment. And imagine this light falling on each and every being in this world. And as the light falls, imagine they also become more loving, more peaceful, more blissful, and more content. And while imagining so, let's chant the prayer Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu 9 times. Om Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. 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 Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Om Dhyayamo Dhabla Vagundhanavatim Tejomayim Nashtikim Snigdha Pangavilokinim Bhagavatim Mandasmidashri Mukhim Valsalyamritavarshiniim sumadhuram Sankirtanalapineem Shamangim madhusikta suktim Amritanandatmikam Ishwareem. Om Narayanam Patmabhuvam Vasishtam Shaktim Cha Tatputram Parasharam Cha Vyasam Shukam Gaudapada Mahandam Govinda Yogindram Adhasya Shishyam Sri Shankaracharyam Adhasya Patmapadam Cha Hastamalakam Cha Shishyam Tam Todakam Vartikakaryamanyaan Asmat Gurum Sandadamanadosmi. In the last session, we saw that the emissaries of Yama, who was trying to pull away the soul of Ajamila, being stopped by the attendants of Lord Vishnu, and they took the soul of Ajamila instead and went to the Vishnu Loka. Then they got confused and they went to Yamadeva, who is the Lord of Death, and asked him this question. We thought that you were the one who would take decision about once a person dies, where the soul should go. But you instructed us to go and bring his soul back. But instead, the attendants of Lord Vishnu came and prevented us. And not only that, they untied his robe and took him along with them. So who is the real person who decides? If there are more than one person who decides, there is always a problem. Right? A person, if there is one decision maker, it will make things easy. But here, what happens is there are more than one person, and that creates a problem. If there are one person, it's easy. There are two, it makes difficult. And more than two, it's chaos. So he's asking, who is the real decision maker here? And so that was a very pertinent question that was asked by the attendants of Yama, the Lord of Death. And Yama said, look, I am one of the deities, just like the other deities, like Brahma, Vayu, all these other people. But Sri Hari is you can say, the supreme consciousness is the Lord. And we all come under him. And we all obey his commands. And we are here to obey his commands only. And if he decides that particular soul should not go to the Yamaloka, that is the abode of Yama, then that is the final decision. So here he's explaining also as to why he was taken by the attendants of Lord Vishnu. So he said that even though he was uttering the word Narayana, even without knowing, and even though he was attached to his son, the fact that he uttered the Lord's name was what gave him that particular place in Vishnu Loka, or in the abode of Lord Vishnu. And he says, he was explaining this to them, and further explanation comes. Why? So they said the Bhagavata Dharma, this is Lord Yama telling the attendants, The Bhagavata Dharma is the dharma par excellence given by the Lord Himself. And the rishis know it not, the celestials know it not, siddhas know it not, and what to speak of then of men, asuras, charanas, and vidyadharas. Oh my boys, so he's saying, the Bhagavata Dharma means the highest supreme dharma. And what is the Bhagavata Dharma? The dharma is chanting the name of the Lord. And he says it's par excellence given by the Lord Himself. And nobody knows what will happen. And we saw the examples. Even if you chant the name once. And he says, nobody knows. The rishis, that is the great sages, does not know. The celestials do not know. The siddhas means the subtle beings do not know. Asuras, the demons, and none of them know what is the result of chanting that divine name. And he says, oh my boys, there are only 12 persons who know this dharma proclaimed by the Lord, which is esoteric and pure, difficult to grasp and potent, enough to confer immortality. So he says there are only 12 people in this world who knows as to what will happen and what is the essence of chanting this name. Because it is difficult to grasp, and also he's saying it is so potent that it will give immortality to the person who is chanting this name. And the 12 are Brahma. Brahma is the creator, not Brahman. Brahman is the supreme consciousness. So Brahma, the creator. Narada, sage Narada. Then Parameshwara, that is Lord Shiva. Sanat Kumara, again the son of Brahma. Kapila, the great sage. Swayambhuva Manu, who is the son of Brahma again. Prahlada, we will see Prahlada again later. And Janaka, the great king and the sage Janaka. And Bhishma, and Mahabali, and Sri Shuka, and myself. So these are the 12 people who know what is the effect of chanting that particular name. So that dharma, briefly stated, is as follows. It is the view of great men that the highest duty of man born in this world is to attain devotion to the Lord through disciplines like chanting His name. So now he's explaining what is the dharma, what is the Bhagavata Dharma. So he's saying only these 12 people know what is the effect, but this is the highest dharma. Dharma means what is the duty. So he says, it is the view of the great men that the highest duty of a man born in this world is to attain devotion to the Lord through disciplines like chanting of His name. O dear ones, see the greatness and power of the utterance of the Lord's name. By that alone, and without any previous practice of devotional sentiment, Ajamila, the sinner, obtained release from the noose of death. So what more you can say? So that is the power of chanting the Lord's name. And he says the recital of the Lord's name, attributes and actions with faith and devotion as a long-standing spiritual practice is not needed for mere expiation of sins. For even without that, by merely shouting the name Narayana when faced with death, with only his own son in view, even the sinner Ajamila obtained mukti, freedom from the effects of sin. So even the Lord's name alone, uttered without any knowledge or devotion, constitutes adequate expiation. by what is the... So he's saying that all you have to do is chant the Lord's name to get liberation, to get mukti. So when you are faced with death, just chant Narayana or Lord's name. That's also, like a great sinner like Ajamala, who lived all his life with a prostitute, a woman, leaving his own wife and his family. And so he obtained mukti, that is freedom from death. So what else do you need? But then you may ask this question, but what is the use of then regular devotional practices like chanting the divine name with faith and love? So he says, when we do all this Sahasranama, the 1,000 names, when we do meditation, and when we do all the other spiritual practices, so what is the use of this? Then all we have to do is just chant the one name, Narayana, at the end of death, when we are dying, isn't it? So if we do that, we will get liberation. So why do you have to work all this time? So he says it consists in this. Such practice alone can efface all even evil tendencies as contrasted with the effects of sinful actions, and generate deep-rooted loving devotion, prema bhakti, which is higher consummation than mere effacement of sin or even mukti. So what happens when you chant Narayana when you are dying? You will get mukti, liberation. But he says what happens when we do regular spiritual practices like chanting the mantra, chanting, doing meditation, doing seva to the Guru. So he says it's what we get is higher than mukti, that is liberation. What is that? Which is bhakti. With this prema bhakti, it's called prema bhakti, bhakti with devotion, with love to the Lord, to the Guru. So that is what we get, what we obtain by doing our regular practices. So he says even mukti is so easy to get, liberation is easy to get as long as you can chant the Lord's name. But you can't get prema bhakti, that is devotion with love. So that is why you are doing all these spiritual practices. And that is what is Bhagavata Dharma, to get prema bhakti. See, like the examples is the gopis. When they were offered mukti, they didn't want liberation, they didn't want that. It is said that the gopis were great sages in their previous birth. And why were they born as gopis was, once these sages were sitting in the forest and doing penance, doing their meditation and penance, Lord Rama walked by. And when they saw the enchanting form of Lord Rama, they forgot all about meditation, they all forgot all about penance, and they forgot about liberation. They didn't even want liberation. And all they wanted was to be with him. To just be in his presence, physical presence. And all they asked was to be in the presence of the Lord. So they were given that boon, that blessing, and that's why in the next birth they were born as gopis. And that is another explanation why Lord Krishna left them and went to Mathura. Lord did not come back. Why? Because they already were liberated. There was no need for them to give them liberation. But the reason is why they wanted to have that birth was to be with the Lord. So think about all of us who are so fortunate to be with Amma in this birth. And even the great sages are earning for this, to be in the presence of such a great avatar or a saint. And this is what we have obtained, to be in Amma's presence. So such is as the Bhagavata Dharma says, such is the grace. And we did not, that's why it's called grace. We did not really work for it, but Amma gave it to us. So we have the grace to be in her presence. So we have to make hay while the sun shines. So better to be in Amma's presence whenever you can. So he says, then the next question comes. He's putting all these questions because you need answers, right? So why did the great sages lay down the elaborate expiatory rites in place of announcing this easily performed discipline? Right? So, when you think about all the expiatory rites, which is to get rid of your sins, why did the great sages do that? They could have just asked people to do spiritual discipline. So the answer is this: the so-called great men, with their minds infatuated by the Lord's Maya, which is the delusive power, with their intelligence rendered dull by the sweet and flowery Vedic texts, offering promises of attractive rewards and heavenly felicities, and with their attention fixed on elaborate Vedic rites for the achievements of such ends, are not generally aware of this saving gospel of devotion. So why? So he says the illusory power of Maya. Maya, which is, we call it illusion, or the power of, it's the same power as the great creative power of the Lord. It's not different. It's the power of the Lord itself in another way. And he says, this has put a veil on people who want to follow the path of devotion. Why? Because they cannot. Even if they want to, they cannot, because the Maya is so powerful. And what happens when you hear about, when you do the Vedic rituals, you will become a very rich person. Or you can marry the most beautiful woman or man in this world. Or you say you get a ton of gold, and people will be running after that. And nobody wants bhakti or devotion. So, and what will they do? They will follow that. They will, even if it is more difficult, they would rather do all these Vedic rituals and rites than do spiritual practices. So what do you need to do spiritual practices? You need maturity of mind. And what does maturity of the mind mean? To understand that these things, what you get from the world, a nice home, 3 or 4 cars, and if you have, people serving you, so all these things is of no worth. It doesn't give you any more happiness than some toys, because you are going to throw away all these toys after some time, or they will disappear. After some time, all these things will disappear from your life. Your house will go away. The people who served you will, instead of serving you, they will find fault with you. And they will say bad things about you. And the car will go away. And the people around you, relatives, will die. They will leave their body and they will die. And finally, you will be all alone. So you have to understand that you came alone and you leave alone. So what happens at that time, there is only one thing that is left with you. What is it? The Lord's name and the devotion. So in order to get that devotion, what will happen? You have to have that kind of a maturity to understand that there is nothing in this world which is satisfying as prema bhakti, devotion with love. Therefore, after due deliberation, let all men practice wholehearted devotion to the worshipful Lord, the infinite being, the indweller in all. Such devotees do not come within the scope of a corrective punishment. Even if they have sins, they are all dispelled by taking the name of the Lord. So he says, this devotees who practice this wholehearted devotion to the Lord, they say, he gives two or three definitions. He says the infinite being. So you can say Parabrahman. That is the Brahman, that consciousness which pervades everywhere, which is the infinite being, the indweller of all. Andaratmi. So Andaratman, so that is one who dwells within each one of us and in each and everything. So he's saying that being, when is worshipped with full of devotion and wholehearted devotion, they do not come under the scope of corrective punishment. They cannot be sent to hell or heaven. Even heaven is temporary. If you think of going to heaven, just forget it, because after some time, when your punya, when your merits are over, you'll have to come down. And similarly, the case with hell also, it's not permanent. As long as you have the papa, that is the sins, then you have to go through that. So he's saying a true devotee will not come under my jurisdiction. And even if they have sins, just by taking the name of the Lord, all their sins will be washed away. And the holy personages whose sanctifying doings are followed by even devas and siddhas, whose attention is always on the all-pervading Lord, and who have taken refuge in him, are always protected by his mace. Do not approach them. Neither we, divinities, nor time can inflict any punishment on them. So he's saying that if you have seen such people, such holy people, so whose sanctifying doings, because when they perform their spiritual practices, they are sanctifying. Even devas, that is gods, and siddhas, means the great beings, whose attention is always on the all-pervading Lord, and who have taken refuge in him, are always protected by his mace. Whose mace? The Lord's mace. So he says, don't even go near them. Neither we, that is the Lord of death, and the people associated with dying, the servants of, or the attendants of the Lord of death, divinities. Divinities means gods, demigods. Not time can inflict any punishment on them. They cannot be punished. And bring here to this purgatory such evil jivas as are averse to taste of the nectar of the lotus feet of the Lord, which is constantly consumed by all renouncing ascetics. So he's saying, who drinks the nectar of devotion? It's all renouncing ascetics. Because all they want is just pure devotion. So he says, bring those people who do not want devotion to me. And bring jivas, that is the individual souls who are intensely attached to home life, which leads them to sinful ways deserving the punishment of the purgatory. So you bring them, those people who are attached to their homes, to their family. What? Why? Because of their attachment, they will do all the sinful acts. And bring here such jivas as those whose tongue never ever uttered once the names of the Lord, declaring His excellences, whose minds never remembers the Lord's feet, and whose head never bows down to the Lord, and who never perform any of the devotional rites connected with the worship of Vishnu. So if a person has not even uttered the name, who has not bowed down even once, and who has not even done anything, bring them here. I will straighten them out. Why? That in one sense, when we talk about hell, the hell means when we go through difficult experiences in life. And heaven means what? When we go through pleasurable experiences in life. So when we go through pleasurable experiences, do we ever remember God, Guru, Amma? Why? Because we are so immersed in it. But at the same time, when we go through difficult times, that's when we start crying and start shouting, Amma, where are you? Why didn't you save me? And we did not think about Amma all this time. And suddenly, when we are faced with difficult situations in life, that's when we start calling Amma, Amma, Amma. And where did Amma go? Amma is always with us. We cannot see. And why we cannot see? Because our mind is not pure. And why do we think that Amma is not helping us? Because our mind is clouded at that time. Through emotions, through our anger, through our negativities. That's why we cannot see, even though Amma is helping us. And we shout for Amma, saying that please come. But we know that at that time she won't come because our mind is filled with all these negativities, so we cannot clearly see, and that's why we feel that Amma is not coming. So he says, whatever wrong his ignorant and humble saluting servants have done, may it be pardoned by the worshipful Lord, the most ancient, the indweller of everything. In the most powerful forbearance is an ornament and salutations to the Supreme Being. So he himself is asking for forgiveness. Why? If I have done anything wrong, please forgive me, O Lord. And Sri Shuka said, therefore, O scion of the Kuru clan, know that the chanting of the Lord's name with faith and devotion is the ultimate and sure expiation for even the greatest of sins. No vow or austerity purifies the heart of man so effectively as devotion engendered easily by hearing and utterances of the name of Sri Hari, denoting his sanctifying deeds and excellences. So he's saying, Shuka now is talking to Parikshit, and he says, oh, scion of Kuru clan, this is Parikshit, king. Parikshit, he says, understand, if you have committed any sins in your life, don't worry about it. How to efface that, how to wipe it out? Just chant the Lord's name. And there are so many experiences, there's so many people, so many examples, right, who have committed a lot of sin. Ajamila was one. Then you must have heard of Valmiki, who was a dacoit. And what did he do? He met the Sapta Rishis, the 7 great Rishis. And all they did was they told him to chant the mantra Rama, Rama, Rama. And he chanted that. And from being a dacoit, a murderer, he became a great sage just by chanting names. So you can just imagine the power of that. And he's saying that's what he's saying here. And he says, one who has imbibed the nectar of Krishna's lotus feet would not hanker after those sin-generating worldly values that have been once rejected. But the one who has not sought refuge in the Lord and is full of desires in the mind performs karmas of an expiatory nature for eradicating his sins, but in the course of doing them, he may commit fresh sins. So he's saying, earlier, you must have heard this also. Earlier, Lord Shuka is saying this. You need not tell bhaktas or devotees what to do and what not to do. When he was talking about dharma earlier, they were explaining this. There is no need to talk about dharma to a great devotee. Why? Because they will always act according to dharma only. They won't do anything wrong. They cannot do anything wrong. They cannot even hurt a small insect. What to talk about it? So they will always perform the correct thing in life. Why? Because they are following the path of devotion and they are aware of what is right and what is wrong instinctively. And you don't have to teach them what is right, what is wrong. And also, what is right and what is wrong, which is dharma, varies according to situations. And the whole of Mahabharata, there are 100,000 verses in Mahabharata. And most of it talks about dharma. Is it for whom? It's for the people who they're saying who are not bhaktas, who are not devotees. Why? Because their mind is filled with desires. And because of these desires, they perform sins. Means they perform bad karmas. And what happens during that? While performing these sins, they are also committing fresh sins. They're creating more and more karma. So what do you do to get out of this? Just have a devotional attitude. And he says, those attendants of Yama were wonderstruck to hear and ponder over what their master said to them about the greatness of the worshipful Lord. Thenceforth, O king, they became afraid of even looking at devotees who have taken refuge at the feet of the Lord. This ancient tradition about Ajamala, unknown to men at large, was narrated by the worshipful Agastya, the pot-born sage, who stays on the Malaya mountain worshipping Sri Hari. So he says, the attendants, the emissaries of Yama, who went after Ajamala, who were asking this question to Lord Yama, were wonderstruck to hear and ponder over what their master said. And so, as a result of which, what they said? They were even afraid to look at devotees who have taken refuge at the feet of the Lord, because they know that they cannot go after the devotees. So he's saying this ancient tradition or this story about Ajamala was narrated by the great sage Agastya. So if you even listen to this story, what happens? That's what he is saying. If you listen to the story, it will give you enthusiasm to chant. It will give you the motive to chant the divine names. It will give you the impetus. Because why? Death is following each one of us. We do not know when we are going to die. It could be next moment. So as Amma says, somebody says, hey, please wait there, I'm coming down the stairs. Just wait. And while coming down the stairs, you can die. Or if you're, driving on the freeway, or if you are eating. I remember, so many devotees, were telling me the stories of their family members or their friends. Or they were telling me this story about, or their experiences about the COVID. And they were telling me a few examples of how their relatives died. One of them told me that she was just sitting there on the sofa watching TV, and the next moment she just fell down and died, had a heart attack. And another person said her husband was just sitting and sipping a cup of tea. He also fell down and died. And so many people just vanished just like that. So death is always following us. Any moment it can happen, and anything can happen in our lives. And one thing, as Amma says, when we are born, there's only one thing that is certain, that we will die. We do not know when, but it is always following us like the shadow, wherever we go. So all we have to understand is, he's saying that death cannot touch a devotee. A devotee who has prema bhakti, devotion to the Lord with love, right? And death cannot touch them. Why? Because they know that they are beyond death. How do we know? Because in highest devotion, in highest love, devotion to the Lord, we forget everything. We forget even our own body, our own mind. And we just concentrate upon the object of our love, which is devotion, which is the Lord only. And there has been so many instances like that. You think about Mirabai. We have heard about Mirabai, right? She was a great saint, Mirabai. And she was so devoted to Lord Krishna. And what happened in the end? They could not even find her body, because she left she left even without leaving her body behind. And we have seen so many instances of such great saints, where they just leave the body. And even if they leave the body, what do? They don't care about that. There's another instance of a great saint. And he was the Shankaracharya of this Sringeri Mutt. And his name is Chandrasekhar Bharati. And prior to his death, about 2 months before he died, we can say he died. He passed away from his body. He called all his devotees and said, on this particular day, such and such a time, I will just walk into the river. And let my body be eaten by the fishes in the river. Don't even worry about my body. And then he just went and sat inside a room. And he never came out for 2 months. And his devotees were begging, asking him to please come out and give us darshan. Even at the last moment, he would not come out. An exact time, as he was said, he had predicted earlier, he just came out, and the river was known as Tungabhadra river. He just walked into the river and attained samadhi, just lying down in the river, and just left his body. So, the same thing with Sri Rama also. How did Sri Rama die? It was samadhi. He just walked into the Sarayu river, and that was the end. And they just left their body. They don't even care about it. And they can leave their body anytime they want. You must have heard the same situation in Amma's life also, where Amma was performing Devi Bhava. I think it was Krishna Bhava, not Devi Bhava. Krishna Bhava, her father came and told her that, you cannot, because they believed at that time that she's being possessed by Lord Krishna. So he said that you have to leave my child's body. And what did Amma say? Amma said, if I leave your child's body, it will be a just dead body. And he didn't. He said, I don't care. Why? He was ignorant. And so he said, I don't care. You just leave my daughter alone. So Amma said, oh, if you want your daughter, here. And then she just left her body. And it was like a corpse. Her body was just like a corpse. And then he realized, and he started crying. And it was only after 8 hours that she came. There was some signs of life in the body. And we have seen that many a times in Amma's life, where she can just easily take off any moment she wants. I mean, that's great saints. Let's talk about devotees. I have seen this in the life of the great poet Otur Unni Namboodiripad. He was a great devotee of Lord Krishna, and he spent most of his time until almost like his age, when he was 82 or so. When he met Amma, before he met Amma, he used to live in a place called Guruvayur, a holy place, where he was worshipping Lord Krishna. Then he met Amma. He came to the ashram. And he wrote a poem 25 years before he met Amma. And we know that song, right? Kannande Punya Nama. So that is the song that was written by him. So, Kannande Punya Namam Karnatil Kelkumbol. That is that song. Kannande Punya Namam Karnatil Yennu Kelkum Nyan. That song. He wrote that song. And what happened was, in that song he had said, Attavum Kazhinja. So that after enacting the whole drama, Attavum Kazhinju, Ammadan Madil, that is in the Divine Mother's lap. I will leave by getting the vision of the enchanting Lord Krishna. Then looking at the enchanting form of the Lord's feet while lying on the lap of the Divine Mother. And Krishna will draw me away. So what did he do? This same thing happened. He came to the ashram, and whenever he was in the ashram, he used to complain a lot to Amma about this pain, that pain, and Amma never cared for all these things. And finally, when he was about to die, he kept calling Amma. Amma, come. No, I'm almost dying. And Amma never listened to that. Why? Because if Amma came, then he will again start complaining about his body. And he will be body consciousness. He will have body consciousness. So at the end, we all thought that he had passed away. And at that moment, Amma came. Amma came and took his head and put it on her lap. and then closed his eyes. So it just happened just like that. So just as he had said, lying on the lap of the Divine Mother, looking at the enchanting form of Lord Sri Krishna, he just left his body. What can you call other than liberation? I mean, you don't need liberation then. All you need is just to be in the abode of the Lord permanently. You don't care, right? When Amma is there, I have heard this question many a times. Has anybody got liberation? Has any of Amma's disciples got liberation? Have they attained samadhi and all these things? Who wants all those things? When you are with Amma, all you want is just to love. And you're not asking for anything. In pure love, you don't ask for anything. You just love. So in that love, you live in that love, and you die in that love. And when that love consumes your whole soul, you become nothing. And that is the life of a greatest devotee. As Amma says, zero becomes hero. In that love, you become a zero. There is no you. There is only the Lord. So that's what we want in our lives. That's what they're talking about, the Bhagavata Dharma. That is only pure love for the Lord, nothing else. Om Amriteshwari Namaha. अमृतेश्वरि सुस्मित चंद्रमुखी अरुणाभसुधात्री जगज्जननी कमलोपमनेत्री कृपालहरी चरणाभयदात्री सुचारुमती अमृतेश्वरि सुस्मित चंद्रमुखी अरुणाभसुगात्री जगज्जननी कमलोपमनेत्री कृपालहरी चरणाभयदात्री सुचारुमती करुणामृतवारिधि कल्पलदे कवितामृतवर्षिणि काव्यकले वरदाभयदायिनि वन्द्यपदे चरणागतपालिनि पावहरे अमृतेश्वरि सुस्मित चंद्रमुखी अरुणाभसुगात्री जगज्जननी कमलोपमनेत्री कृपालहरी चरणाभयदात्री सुचारुमती स्वररूपी सरस्वती नादमयी शिवकामिनी शंकरी राघवदी सुखदात्री सुरेश्वरी सर्वमयी शुभमूर्ति शिवंकरि ऐमवदे सरस्वती नादमयी शिवकामिनी शंकरि राघवदी सुखदात्री सुरेश्वरी सर्वमयी शुभमूर्ति शिवंकरि ऐमवदे अमृतेश्वरि सुस्मित चंद्रमुखी अरुणाभसुगात्री जगज्जननी कमलोपमनेत्री कृपालहरी चरणाभयदात्री सुचारुमती शिवरूपिणि शाम्भवि शैलसुदे श्रुतिरूपि सुरार्चितपादयुगे शमदायिनि सर्वरि भवभञ्जिनि भैरवि भावघने करता तुम हो, दुख हरता तुम हो, हे भाग्य विधाता गणनाथा तुम हो।
सुख करता तुम हो, दुख हरता तुम हो, हे भाग्य विधाता गणनाथा तुम हो।
सुख करता तुम हो, दुख हरता तुम हो, हे भाग्य विधाता गणनाथा तुम हो।
सुख करता तुम हो, दुख हरता तुम हो, हे भाग्य विधाता गणनाथा तुम हो।
गणपति बप्पा मोरिया, मंगलमूर्ति मोरिया।
गणपति बाप्पा मोरया, मंगलमूर्ति मोरया।
गणपति बप्पा मोरिया, मंगलमूर्ति मोरिया।
गणपति बाप्पा मोरया, मंगलमूर्ति मोरया।
मंगलमूर्ति 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 मोरिया।
मंगलमूर्ति 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 मोरया।
मंगलमूर्ति 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 मोरिया।
मंगलमूर्ति 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 मोरया।
मनमोहक है रूप तेरा, ओंकार स्वरूप तेरा।
मनमोहक है रूप तेरा, ओंकार स्वरूप तेरा।
हे भक्तों पे ध्यान तेरा,
हे भक्तों पे ध्यान तेरा।
करुणार्द्र हृदय तेरा, करुणार्द्र हृदय तेरा। हे भक्तों पे
ध्यान तेरा, करुणार्द्र हृदय तेरा, करुणार्द्र हृदय तेरा।
गणपति बप्पा मोरिया, मंगलमूर्ति मोरिया।
गणपति बाप्पा मोरया, मंगलमूर्ति मोरया।
गणपति बप्पा मोरिया, मंगलमूर्ति मोरिया।
गणपति बाप्पा मोरया, मंगलमूर्ति मोरया।
मंगलमूर्ति 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 मोरिया।
मंगलमूर्ति 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 मोरया।
मंगलमूर्ति 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 मोरिया।
मंगलमूर्ति 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 मोरया।
मन जो है बड़ा चंचल, तेरे स्मरण से हो निश्चल।
मन जो है बड़ा चंचल, तेरे स्मरण से हो निश्चल।
भक्ति भाव कर दे प्रबल,
भक्ति भाव कर दे प्रबल।
भक्ति भाव कर दे प्रबल।
भक्ति भाव कर दे प्रबल।
जन्म मेरा हो सफल, जन्म मेरा हो सफल।
भक्ति भाव कर दे प्रबल, जन्म मेरा हो सफल, जन्म मेरा हो सफल।
गणपति बप्पा मोरिया, मंगलमूर्ति मोरिया।
गणपति बाप्पा मोरया, मंगलमूर्ति मोरया।
गणपति बप्पा मोरिया, मंगलमूर्ति मोरिया।
गणपति बाप्पा मोरया, मंगलमूर्ति मोरया।
मंगलमूर्ति 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 मोरिया।
मंगलमूर्ति 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 मोरया।
मंगलमूर्ति 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 मोरिया।
मंगलमूर्ति 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 मोरया।
गणपति बप्पा मोरिया, मंगलमूर्ति मोरिया।
गणपति बाप्पा मोरया, मंगलमूर्ति
गणपति बप्पा मोरया मंगलमूर्ति मोरया मंगलमूर्ति 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 मोरया मंगलमूर्ति 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 मोरया मंगलमूर्ति 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 मोरया गोपी गोपाला वेणु गोपाला मुकुंद माधव गोपी गोपाला
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 कृष्ण हरे जय कृष्ण हरे 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 जय
कृष्ण हरे जय कृष्ण हरे कृष्ण हरे जय कृष्ण हरे कृष्ण हरे जय कृष्ण हरे कृष्ण हरे जय कृष्ण हरे
कृष्ण हरे जय कृष्ण हरे कृष्ण हरे जय कृष्ण हरे कृष्ण हरे जय कृष्ण हरे कृष्ण हरे जय कृष्ण हरे
कृष्ण हरे जय कृष्ण हरे
जय
कृष्ण हरे जय कृष्ण हरे
जय
कृष्ण हरे जय कृष्ण हरे
जय
कृष्ण हरे जय कृष्ण हरे
जय हरि बोल जय राम बोल
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 हरि हरि बोल गोविंद 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 बोल
हरि और शंकर सब है तेरा नाम
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 कृष्ण हरे जय कृष्ण हरे कृष्ण हरे जय कृष्ण हरे कृष्ण हरे जय कृष्ण हरे कृष्ण हरे जय कृष्ण हरे
कृष्ण हरे जय कृष्ण हरे कृष्ण हरे
Jai Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Jai Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Jai Krishna Hare
Krishna Hare Jaya Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Jaya Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Jaya Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Jaya Krishna Hare
सब सुख ले लो सब दुख ले लो
सब सुख ले लो सब दुख ले लो
जय हरि बोल जय राम बोल
जय हरि बोल जय राम
हरि हरि बोल गोविंद बोल
हरि हरि बोल गोविंद
हरि और शंकर सब है तेरा नाम
हरि हरि शंकर सब है तेरा
हरि और शंकर सब है तेरा नाम
हरि हरि शंकर सब है तेरा
कृष्ण हरे जय कृष्ण हरे कृष्ण हरे जय कृष्ण हरे कृष्ण हरे जय कृष्ण हरे कृष्ण हरे जय कृष्ण हरे
कृष्ण हरे जय कृष्ण हरे कृष्ण हरे जय कृष्ण हरे कृष्ण हरे जय कृष्ण हरे कृष्ण हरे जय कृष्ण हरे
गोपी गोपाला वेणु गोपाला मुकुंद माधव गोपी गोपाला
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 कृष्ण हरे जय कृष्ण हरे कृष्ण हरे जय कृष्ण हरे कृष्ण हरे जय कृष्ण हरे कृष्ण हरे जय कृष्ण हरे
कृष्ण हरे जय कृष्ण हरे कृष्ण हरे जय कृष्ण हरे कृष्ण हरे जय कृष्ण हरे कृष्ण हरे जय कृष्ण हरे
जय कृष्ण हरे जय कृष्ण हरे कृष्ण हरे जय कृष्ण हरे कृष्ण हरे जय कृष्ण हरे कृष्ण हरे जय कृष्ण हरे
कृष्ण हरे जय कृष्ण हरे कृष्ण हरे जय कृष्ण हरे कृष्ण हरे जय कृष्ण हरे कृष्ण हरे जय कृष्ण हरे
कृष्ण हरे जय कृष्ण हरे कृष्ण हरे जय कृष्ण हरे कृष्ण हरे जय कृष्ण हरे कृष्ण हरे जय कृष्ण हरे
कृष्ण हरे जय कृष्ण हरे कृष्ण हरे जय कृष्ण हरे कृष्ण हरे जय कृष्ण हरे कृष्ण हरे जय कृष्ण हरे
जय कृष्ण हरे जय कृष्ण हरे
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 काली दुर्गे नमो नमः
काली दुर्गे नमो नमः काली दुर्गे नमो नमः
काली दुर्गे नमो नमः काली दुर्गे नमो नमः अम्ब काली दुर्गे नमो नमः अम्ब काली दुर्गे नमो नमः काली दुर्गे नमो नमः काली दुर्गे नमो नमः शक्ति कुंडलिनी नमो नमः काली दुर्गे नमो नमः शक्ति कुंडलिनी नमो नमः काली दुर्गे नमो नमः നമോ നമഃ. അംബ കാളി ദുർഗേ നമോ നമഃ. അംബ കാളി ദുർഗേ നമോ നമഃ. ഉമാ പാർവതി നമോ നമഃ. കാളി ദുർഗേ നമോ നമഃ. അമൃതേശ്വരി മംഗളം പ്രണമദാ മുക്തിപ്രദേ മംഗളം ഭുവനേശ്വരി മംഗളം സുഖീനാ ഏകാശ്രയേ അമൃതേശ്വരി മംഗളം പ്രണമദാ മുക്തിപ്രദേ മംഗളം ഭുവനേശ്വരി മംഗളം कृदेना एकाश्रये मङ्गलम् हृदयेश्वरी मङ्गलम् हृदिलसत्तेजोर्मयी मङ्गलम् मृदुभाषिणी मङ्गलम् विजयदा प्रेमाकृते मङ्गलम् विजयदा प्रेमाकृते मङ्गलम् विजयदा प्रेमाकृते मङ्गलम् परिपालिनि जयदा अमृतानन्दमयी मादा अमृतानन्दमयी सुरजन पूजित जय जगदम्बा अमृतानन्दमयी सहज समाधि सुधन्य देवी अमृतानन्दमयी मादा अमृतानन्दमयी मादा अमृतानन्दमयी मादा अमृतानन्दमयी ॐ जय जय जगजननी वन्दे अमृतानन्दमयी मंगलारती माधव भवानी अमृतानन्दमयी मादा अमृतानन्दमयी माता अमृतानन्दमयी जय बोलो सद्गुरु माता अमृतानंदमयी देवी की असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मा अमृतं गमय ॐ शान्ति 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 ॐ लोकाः समस्ताः सुखिनो भवन्तु लोकाः समस्ताः सुखिनो भवन्तु लोकाः समस्ताः सुखिनो भवन्तु ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः ॐ श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः हरि